deficit which has to be covered, and that covered deficit is current account deficit. And finally, there is what is called the speculative motive for keeping reserves, and that is supposing your debts are called back. For instance, short-term debts will always be called back. And that's how the East Asian crisis of 1997 took place, when the short-term debts were called back, and these Thailand and right up to Japan, and these East Asian countries have taken short-term debts and invested it in long-term assets and fixed assets like real estate. And then they couldn't pay back, and that's how the crisis came. The same way, you have to have reserves to cover what is called as the speculative motive, that suddenly something changes and all the short-term notes which are convertible are called back. So if you look at that, these commitments, precautionary, transactive, and the speculative, this reserve is just barely enough. If it falls below 200, you are in trouble. And therefore, we would have the same kind of crisis that we had in 1990, when I had the misfortune of becoming Minister for Commerce, and we came through with it. Although, without my knowledge, the finance minister, then finance minister, had auctioned gold, which was totally unnecessary. It was not called for. We had got $2 billion from the IMF in exchange for allowing the American planes to land and refuel in India to go to Saudi Arabia, and it was totally unnecessary. But I was not in the loop, and consequently, of course, before going, I did put a note in the official files that nothing can be exported from the country without the permission of the Commerce Minister, and therefore an arrest warrant should be issued against who are responsible. And that is still not being acted on, can be acted on. Now, the fourth thing that we find in our country which is dangerous is the infrastructure situation is in really bad state. Recent Planning Commission announcements show that our power targets are only 1/3 of, the achievements today of power is only 1/3 of the targets set by the 5-year plans. This is extraordinary non-performance. Finally, there are other negative features which I just mentioned in passing. One is that our stock market is becoming increasingly rigged. It's being managed. The peaks and troughs are being managed. There's a huge Hawala operation going on, which needs to be curbed. The National Security Advisor himself has gone on record to say that that Hawala operations are enabling terrorists to play in our stock market. And finally, I will make a slight disagreement with my predecessor, Mr. Swamy, on these indicators of quality of life which he mentioned. They are not getting worse, but relative to other countries, we are getting worse. If you take the overall index of human development, Human Development Index put out by the United Nations, that value of the index is going up. But when you look at it in terms of relative positions in countries, we are falling down. We were 118, now we are 127th in the bottom, towards the bottom of the list. So we are getting closer and closer to countries which have terrible human rights, human development indexes. But nevertheless, his basic point is still valid, that despite all this enormous money at your control, you are not being able to do what is easily doable, namely improve the quality of life. Having given you this depressing picture, is there a hope? Am I painting a hopeless case? No, answer is no. Because I've been through these 40 years of my public life, through many crises. And we've come out quite well. I remember when I was teaching at Harvard, there was a book that came out in 1965, October 1965. I was then just become associate professor of economics, young man. And then I was fired with enthusiasm about the country. and they came out a book saying that it was called World Famine in 1975. And the book is still available. If you go to Google or Amazon.com, you can get the book. Written by two brothers working in the State Department as officials, called Paddock and Paddock, William Paddock and Robert Paddock. And they wrote this book in the context of India having this food crisis, where we were literally begging the Americans for shipments of the PL480 grain. That was very humiliating for an Indian at that time. And my class students, my course on development, economic development in India, which is one of the courses I taught, students used to ask me embarrassing questions. But in that book, what he says is that in 10 years' time, there will be a world famine. And like military people, we have to decide who are the wounded, who should be. In a military battle, the military commander decides who's to be rescued and who's not to be rescued. And who's rescuable, who's not rescuable. And he abandons those who are not rescuable. And in the non-rescuable countries, India was listed as a bottomless pit. Even if the entire United States production was given to India, India will never be, will go hungry, and riots are inevitable. Cannibalism will return to India as it was there before. But anyway, he said it will return to India. It's all written this in the book. I still use it. I go every year to teach at Harvard. I refer to this book as the kind of things they said. In 1975, we became self-sufficient food, and in fact we started exporting food. Now what happened in those 10 years, 65 to 75? Green Revolution came.